during this lesson, we are going to be factoring with special patterns. And so we're going to do just what we did in our previous chapter when we multiplied using special patterns, just in reverse order. You've got your list of perfect squares here. We'll refer back to those throughout. So if you remember from multiplication, we worked backwards, right? We had a plus b, the whole thing squared, and that was equal to a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So then try to remember what, in a similar pattern, was equal to a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So really try to think about it. All right, so then there's your other pattern, a minus b quantity squared. Okay, so make sure you write these down so that you have them in your notes. As you go through the video, you should be writing things down, recording any questions that you have, and pause the video anytime you need a little extra time, and you can always rewind. All right, so our next pattern is, remember, if we had a plus b times a minus b, when we multiplied that through, we ended up with a squared minus b squared. So same thing goes in reverse order. So like I said, the reason we want these patterns is we want shortcuts. If you have a pattern and you have a problem that fits the pattern, you can factor it much more quickly if you recognize the pattern than you would if you had to go back and do the diamond or the diamond and box. Okay, so go ahead and write the examples down as I go through. Again, if you need any more time than I'm giving in the video, you can always pause so that you can write it down and then keep on going. So what we're going to do here is we're looking for, out of these patterns, which one this is most similar to. And so if we look over here, we've got something squared minus something else. So that fits a squared minus b squared. So what we can do is we can expand this out with a separated and then b separated. We have one plus and one minus. Okay, so we've got something squared minus something squared, so that way we can identify what a and b are. Well, so in the a position, we've got x. But in the b position, we're looking for what squared equals 4. Well, that's going to be 2. So now we've got our a squared minus b squared. So we can split it up into a plus b. So here's our a's, which is x, and our b, which is 2. So we've got x plus 2 and x minus 2. And once you start to get quicker at these, you can jump right from your x squared minus 4 into x plus 2x minus 2. Okay, so now we'll take a look at this one. Same thing. We're going to look at which form our equation is in. So we've got, or our expression, x squared plus 14x plus 49. So then over here, we've got a squared plus something squared. So this is the pattern we're looking for. And we're going to try to write it as a plus b squared, but what we need to do first is identify what a and b are. So when you're doing this, we're going to try to fit it into this form. That fits the general outline of the pattern. So for our first part, we've got x squared, so that's going to be x in here. Then I like to look at my last term here. So in my last one, I'm looking for, well, 49 is what squared? So I ignore the middle for now. So 49 is 7 squared. So then, if you look over here, we've got 2ab. So here's our a and here's our b. So we've got 2, and then we need an a and a b. So that 2 comes directly from the pattern. Okay, well, a is x and b is 7. And the order that you write them in doesn't really matter. I usually put the number closest to the 2. So now we've expanded out so we can see our pattern. So then we need to rewrite it. So it's going to be a plus b. Well, a is x. B is 7. So you can write it like this, which you don't really have to do that step if you're just going from here into the pattern. So you can write it as x plus 7 whole thing squared. Okay, so now we've seen 2 of our patterns. So then on this next one, try to recognize which general type it is before I show it. Think about it for a second. Okay, hopefully you said it was this a squared minus b squared. We have one single term minus another. Okay, so now we need to break it into its parts. So 9n squared is a little bit more complicated than the last one. So it's not just going to be n squared. We're looking at what is 9 going to be. Okay, so we're looking at 3n squared there. Then we can split 49. We need it as its perfect square squared. So that's going to be 7. Okay, now we have our a, 3n, and our b, 7. So we can write it in the pattern. All right, so take a look at this next one. We've got 3 terms. That tells you it's going to be one of these. we've got a perfect square here, because remember that 4 is a perfect square, and a perfect square at the end. Those are the two things that I check first. So it looks like it's going to fit this pattern. So let's double check. Okay, so we're going to write 4x squared as a quantity squared. So remember, 4 is really 2 squared, so you're going to write that as 2x then squared. Then I'm looking over here, 9 is the same as 3 squared. Then I'm going to double check. Does 2x times 2 times 3 really equal 12? Okay, so then I'm thinking about, well, 2 times 3 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12. Oh yeah, okay, I've got 12x. So you always want to verify. Now that we see that it does fit this pattern, we can just write it as a plus b quantity squared, where a is 2x, b is 3. So we've got 2x plus 3 then squared. Okay, so try this one out on your own. Pause the video, write down your answer, then unpause and see how you did. Okay, so you can double check your work. You should get x plus 10 and x minus 10, because x squared we can reduce into x squared, and then 100 is really 10 squared. All right, so now we're looking at x squared minus 16x plus 64. So again, we're looking up at our patterns, and this one looks the most like this. So let's see if we can't put it into that same pattern. So the first thing to do is to split it apart. X squared, you can rewrite x there. I'm going to go to the last term. So 64 is what squared? So think about that, write it down. Hopefully you wrote 8. Now we're going to see if we multiply x times 8 times 2, 2ab, do we get the 16x? Okay, so 2 times 8 times x, well, that's 16, and x, we've got a minus. Okay, so it works. So we do have this pattern here. So we can write our final answer as our a minus b quantity squared, where a is x and b is 8. So we're going to write it as x minus 8 quantity squared. Okay, so we've got another pattern here, and hopefully we can recognize this one. Slightly different, but we do have two terms with subtraction. So that's telling me this guy. So what we need to do is we need to rewrite this as each separate term as a quantity squared. So we've got x squared for the first one, no problem. The second one's a little trickier because there's a 4 in front. So we know there's going to be y in here, but then don't forget that you need to square root the 4. So we'll have 2y squared. So if there's two variables, that's fine. There'll just be two variables in your answer. So then now that we've split it up, now we can write it as x plus 2y and x minus 2y. And again, if you can start to recognize it and go straight from here down to your answer, by all means, go for it. That's the whole point of doing these patterns, is so that we can do these more quickly. All right, so now we're on to another one, again with two variables, but try to see which pattern it fits into. So we've got all these three terms. So let's look over here. We've got a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. There's a minus, there's three terms, so hopefully it'll fit that one. Okay, so let's split everything up. Again, we've got an x out in front. So notice it just carried over. Then our last term here, we've got 16y squared. Well, 16 is 4 squared. So we're going to write that as 4y then squared. So now what we need to do is verify. If we put 4y in here, does this product equal our middle term? But we're going to say 2 times 4y times x. Well, does that equal 8xy? Yes. Okay, so now we can see that we can factor this into x minus 4y quantity squared. All right, so go ahead and try this next one on your own. Pause the video, write down your answer, and then double check against mine once you're done. Okay, so we can split up our x squared into x and x. We can split 25y squared into 5y and 5y, and then we just need to remember we have a plus and a minus. All right, so go ahead and try number 10 on your own as well. Pause the video. Okay, you can double check. We can split up 4y squared into 2y quantity squared. Since there's a minus here, we need a minus in our answer, and we'll split up our x. All right, now we're going to get a little bit trickier. So there's a little note here that says always factor, or careful to factor out first. And that's always what you should do. If you can find something that factors out, do that before you do anything else. Because right now, the way this is, it does not actually fit the pattern. Because 3 isn't a perfect square and 27 isn't a perfect square. But 3 goes into both 3x squared and 27. So that's the first step here. Factor that 3 out. So go ahead and write down what's left over. Divide each of these terms by 3. Pause the video if you need extra time thinking about it. All right, so once we have factored out a 3, that's what's left. And just like our other problems when we factored out first, we're always going to start by rewriting that number that you factored out. So we're going to keep that in our answers. Then from here, we're looking at x squared minus 9. We're not including the 3 anymore. So x squared minus 9 fits this pattern here. So if you can jump to your final answer, go for it. If you need to split it up first, that's fine too. So we'll split up our x here, and then 9 is 3 squared. So then your final answer is going to be the 3 that we factored out, and then x plus 3 and x minus 3. Okay, so this next problem is very similar, where we have to factor out before we do anything else. We're looking at 2x squared, 20x, and 50. They all share a common factor. Hopefully you are already thinking about it, of 2. So just like before, make sure you rewrite that 2 so you don't lose it. Okay, and I usually will even write the final answer blanks ready to go. Then factor out. Okay, divide each of these terms by 2 and write what's left. Pause the video if you need more time. Okay, so we factored out, and now we're looking at x squared plus 10x plus 25. So just the inside looks like it fits this pattern. So see if you can factor it out, just the inside, using that pattern. Okay, we're going to expand it here. Try it on your own. Pause the video right now, and then I'll show the steps, but I want you to have yours already done before you listen. Okay, so we're splitting our x into x squared, and we're splitting our 25 into 5 squared. So then we're going to verify. Does 2 times 5 times x really equal 10x? Well, 2 times 5 is 10, so we're good there. And so then your final answer will include the 2 that we already factored out, and it will include our x plus 5 from our factor pattern. So now you are able to factor using your special factor patterns. And what this will do, like I said at the beginning, will help hopefully save you a little bit of time and save you from making careless mistakes if you're going through the whole process.